everybody. In this video, we're going to look at topic 2. We're going to look at example 2, but we're going to take a little stop here on the concepts of complex numbers. So complex numbers usually have two components to it, or complex numbers usually have two components to it. You have the real number, the integer, and you have the imaginary component. So you have an integer and an imaginary. A being your integer, B times I is your imaginary. And the imaginary number is usually when you take the square root of -1. So an imaginary number is a number B times I, where B is a non-zero real number and I is the square root of -1. And I usually write my I's kind of fancy to denote that this is not a variable, that this is actually a complex imaginary number. So complex numbers are numbers that can be written in the form of A plus BI, where A and B are real numbers and I is the square root of -1. They include all real and imaginary numbers, as well as the sum of real and imaginary numbers. For example, -6 plus 4i has A of -6, which is your real number, and then you have your imaginary number, which is 4, because that is again tied to the imaginary square root of -1. 7 minus I times the square root of 2, where 7 is your real and -2 is your imaginary. 0.51, you only have an imaginary component because A in this case is 0. So our real number is 0 and our imaginary number is 0.5. So again, complex numbers have two components to it, and thus are complex. So example 2, we're going to start looking at how to add complex numbers, how to subtract complex numbers, how to divide complex numbers. And there are specific ways of multiplication and division, but addition and subtraction are usually just like if you're adding and subtracting numbers with variables in it. So in this case, sorry, trying to get my snipping tool. In this case, we're going to be looking at how you can add and subtract complex numbers. So we're going to add these two. We have 4 minus 7i plus -11 plus 9i. Now, remember PEMDAS. We always have to follow PEMDAS. For everything that you do mathematically, you always have to follow PEMDAS. So first thing we're going to look at is parentheses. Do we really need this grouping here? Do we really need these parentheses here? We cannot combine these two complex numbers. This is in the imaginary world. This is in the real world. So we cannot combine the two of them. So I'm going to take them out of the parentheses in this case because we're just adding. And it's the same with this group here. And again, you're going to be distributing that to plus all the way through. So positive times a negative is still a negative. Positive times a positive is still a positive. Now what I'm going to do is just like you would do for variables, you're going to do the same thing for imaginary. We're going to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine my real components. So 4 minus 11 is going to be -7. And then you have -7i, so we're going to combine our imaginary components, which is -7i plus 9i, which is going to be plus 2i. And we have successfully added our two parts. So the second part here is going to be how can you add and subtract complex numbers. So they want to know what the difference. We're going to be subtracting in this one. What is the difference? I have that stayed highlighted between these two numbers. Again, we're going to follow PEMDAS with this. So I have 6 plus 8i minus 2 minus 5i. I want to, one, see if there's anything I could do in the parentheses. There's no combination. There's no way I could combine anything in these parentheses. And just like that last example, we are going to distribute this negative to both those terms. So negative times a positive 2, that's right, is a negative 2. Negative times a negative 5i, that would be a positive 5i. And we've done all the operations to kind of combine as much as we can here on the second grouping. Now I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine my real, and then I'm going to combine my imaginary. And we get 4 plus 13. All right, guys, so this is the end of this example. You do have a try it, so I would like you guys to try the positives and the negatives. So I could see what sense you guys have on these complex numbers, and I will see you in the next video.